Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring Land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer!
All
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
And a pointless.
We know all things.
All right. Welcome back to Boring Reviews. Nick here.
Gabe, Gaitonde.
And Gabe Gaitonde, he's got so many names and he keeps track of them all. I'm very impressed. You see how lazy I am? I just say Nick here. We are here to check out another trailer reaction, somewhat recent when the trailer got dropped. I was up pretty late last night, and of course, this dropped an hour after I fell asleep finally. We're talking about a film, I think it's called D Company, and this is a request by Varun, the man, the myth, the legend. He's got some great requests for us recently. And if you're thinking, like, how come Varun gets all the love? Why does he get all the requests? Because he's letting us know when these new trailers are being dropped. Please, guys, let us know. I appreciate Varun taking that job and hooking us up. This is based on a real underworld don, Dawood Ibrahim. And this is directed by Ram Gopal Verma, RGV. He's one of the best directors of the 90s in India. He was the inspiration for Anurag Kashyap. And he said lately his movies haven't really been that good, but here's this trailer. He said this trailer has only one piece of dialogue, no subtitles, and that dialogue is, "Without my physical strength, what will your intelligence do?" All right. So what do you think, Gabe?
You know, when something's based on a true story, I always pause because, you know, how close to a real story can you get? You know what I mean? And still be entertaining. Most real stories aren't entertaining. So how much liberties do you take with that story, if that makes sense? You know what I mean? But you know me, man. I'll try everything. I'll check anything out. And the underworld, I mean, you know, why not? You know what I'm saying? Why not? Let's check it out, bro.
I figured you get excited about that. This is definitely down Gabe's alley, and I'm excited to check this out. So, ladies, I almost said students. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to hook us up if you don't mind. And liking the video really helps us out, and subscribing also helps us out as well. And we are ready to jump into this in 3, 2, 1. I don't know why, but I just love seeing water crashing on rocks. I don't know.
Beauty of nature.
This dreaded organization.
Bombay, 1980s.
It's interesting how they're focusing just on the music and the sound effects of the items, but not the dialogue.
The cinematography, too. Some of the shots.
It almost has a feel... Wow, it's innovative, Bill Gates. It almost has a feel of a movie that came out 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They got guards at every corner. Oh!
No!
That's a serious pistol right there.
Ooh.
Is that a kid? Oh my gosh.
That's a beautiful shot right there.
Oh yeah. Good call.
నా బలం లేకపోతే నీ తెలివేం చేస్తుంది?
Wow. Am I wrong? Is it lazy of me to make a connection between that and Gangs of Wassaipa? And I'm talking about the camera that's being used. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's a modern high-tech camera that's being used. And I think it's done on purpose. I don't think it's because of lack of budget.
Right.
That has that kind of feel to me. Obviously a different type of situation than Gangs of Wassaipa in that story. But am I completely off base by saying that? Am I just being lazy by saying that?
No. I think what you're trying to say is the way it's being shot. Maybe not even the camera, but the way it's being shot, it makes you feel like it was shot in the 80s. Just like Guns of Wassaipa, you can tell it's not taking place in modern time. That's not a 2020 or 2019. You know what I mean? That happened probably in the 80s or, maybe late 90s. So you can tell the different time periods. And yeah, they intentionally do it that way. I'll tell you right now, I got feels as soon as I'm watching this, man. And, when you got all these gangster movies or whatever, why is it that the 80s? Think about the 80s, all right? This was in America anyway. This was when Gotti was around, right? Early 80s, late 80s. This is when the mafia was at its peak. When we're talking about Scarface, when did that take place, right? So Scarface was another huge film. That was in the 80s or whatnot. And a lot of these big gangster films take place in the 80s, early 90s or whatnot. That was a really violent time period. Now, I can tell you from firsthand experience, bro, living in New York, 80s were no joke. The 80s were no joke, bro. It was a war zone, man. And is it that our culture has somewhat gotten softer, or maybe it's definitely gotten less violent over the last, I'm 40 now, so but from the 80s and 90s to the 2000s, definitely you don't see, at least here in America, that much organized crime and even gang violence. You see stuff, but not as much as when I was growing up back in those days. And I think that has also led to the death of the gangster film. Think about how many big gangster films came out in the 80s and late 90s. We're talking about Goodfellas. We're talking about Carlito's Way. We're talking about Scarface. We're talking about what's the name of that? Wow, how do I forget? We're talking about The Godfather. But because that's not what's happening in our society now, they're not really making too many films about that now. Does that make sense? I think a lot of time art imitates real life. So in art, art right now, present day, isn't going to imitate the gangster film, as far as the gangster persona, because that's not what's going on right now.
Well, I think with the evolution of technology, with the evolution of the CCTV and all that kind of stuff, as far as criminal enterprises go, it's more of a digital criminal enterprise. It's more of identity theft. It's scams. It's all these different things. It's no longer bust into your house and massacring your entire family, but it's now taking entire wealth with the push of a button. And it's all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't want to get too much into that because I don't really have too much expertise. That's just my first initial thoughts. But as far as a trailer goes, I mean, that was quite interesting. Again, you don't have any of the dialogue. You can see the mouse moving, but no audio. You just have the buildup of the music and the chains being dropped and whatnot. That was quite interesting. You had what looks like some guy behind that cigarette who's going to be maybe our hero, who's going to maybe the guy that bring down this organization. But man, this movie is going to look like it's going to be bananas, where there's just going to be all kinds of nonsense going on. I think it's always bold for any kind of director to make a movie based on an evil organization, if you will, a criminal organization, because you run the risk of being accused of glorifying violence And then also you have the people that might still be alive that were part of that organization. They're like, oh, you're making them. I mean, it's crazy, but at the same time with film, it's art. It's the liability that comes from art and trying to say, this is a story we want to tell. The trailer definitely looks really, really promising for that film.
I mean, just kind of piggyback on your point with the film American Me, Edward James Olmos had death threats, bro. People on the cast were quitting because the Mexican mafia was like, "You're not gonna portray us like that on film." And there were some people that died behind that film because they were part of the MA and they gave out some secrets to the filmmakers in order to get it out there. And the MA was not happy. You know what I mean? The Mexican mafia. So I know what you're saying. Where like you still run that risk if there's going to be people that feel some kind of way about that. You know what I mean? Listen, it may not be as strong as it once was, but Gotti still has people out there, all right? You know what I'm saying? He has a daughter, Victoria Gotti, who has sons, you know what I mean? And that name still rings true in New York on any street corner you're at. So I feel what you're saying, man. No, I think I the one thing that really the music, the score, I never paid attention to scores honestly until I started doing film reviews with Nick, and he used to bring up the score all the time. That was an afterthought to me as far as the score is concerned. But you used to always talk about the score of your favorite films, and I started paying more attention to the score and the way Christopher Nolan, for instance, uses music and the score as part of the film. You know, you told me, hey, bro, you gotta watch a Tenet at the movie theaters because the score is such a big part of the film. It takes away from the experience if you're not in there. And you could tell how the score, at least in this trailer, was such a big part of the feeling they were building up for.
Absolutely. And it's it's you always have an underdog story. And I'm assuming Varun's correct. If he's correct, and this director who was legendary in the 90s has had some struggling films, who knows? This might be his redemption story. This might be his movie that brings him back on the map. I like how it's working so far. I like the feel of it. I like what's going. We don't have a lot of information, but I mean, if you're into films that aren't afraid to get into the nitty gritty, afraid to get violent and all that kind of stuff, this definitely looks like the film for you. The question is, ladies and gentlemen, what are your thoughts about it? What do you think? Are we giving it way too much love? Already talking about in the same sentences as those mobster movies that are so famous and popular, like Gabe mentioned, and Gangs of Wassper and that kind of such? Or do you get kind of that same kind of feel? Are you excited for this? Please let us know. Thank you so much for watching this, and until next time.
We know all things.